Okay, so let's go through these 4 problems from the quiz. Number 1, 2x plus 9 plus 8x equals 14. So this is what we would call a regular equation because it has just one variable, and that's x, but we have 2 of them. And so what you're going to have to do is combine those like terms. You're going to have to combine the variables so that you can solve. So step 1 is going to be to combine those, and 2x plus 8x, they're on the same side, so we just combine them, would be 10x. And then we still have plus 9 equals 14, those don't change. And then to get the x by itself, we're trying to isolate that. The 10 is like hooked to it, so you can't do the 10 yet, but we can move the 9. And it's a plus 9, so we're going to minus 9. And then that would leave 10x equals 5. And then this is where some people would get tricked because they see the 10 and the 5 and they think, oh, 10 divided by 5 is 2. But the problem is that it's the 10 next to the x. So we have to divide by 10. So it's not 10 divided by 5, it's 5 divided by 10, which is a fraction that you just reduce. And so that would be 1/2. Number 2 is one that has many variables, and so it just looks a little different. It is 5q minus 3n all over m equals f. And we are trying to solve this one for q. So we're trying to get that letter q all by itself. Well, because of those parentheses up on the top, that's kind of stuck. And so we can't do anything with that yet. So the only thing we can do is we can move that m. And that's divided by m. So the opposite would be multiply by m. And that cancels. So that would be 5q minus 3n, and those are just variables, so we're just going to write them together, fm. And then again, we're trying to solve for q. The 5's hooked to it, so that stays. So we're going to move this whole piece. And since that's minus 3n, to move it over, we would have to add 3n, both sides. And then that cancels. So that leaves 5q. And then those aren't like terms, so we're just going to write them. Fm plus 3n. And now to get the q by itself, the only thing left is the 5, and that's 5 times q. So the opposite would be divide by 5. And this has lots of variables that can't be combined, and so as weird as it looks, that's the answer. Fm plus 3n all divided by 5. Flip that. Next one. Number 3. It's about the same, kind of looks the same. 7p plus 2t all over s equals n, and this time we are solving for p. So again, that's all in parentheses, so it's kind of stuck, so we can't touch anything up here, but we're trying to get the p by itself, so something over here has to go, so it must be the s. And that's divide by s, and so the opposite would be multiply by s. And that cancels. So then we have 7p plus 2t. Again, not much we can do with that, but we can just write it ns. And then we're trying to get the p by itself. The 7's kind of hooked, so we're going to get rid of this. And that's plus 2t, so we would minus 2t. Always opposite operations and cancel. So that leaves 7p. Those aren't like terms, so all we do is just write them. ns minus 2t. And then to get the p by itself, the 7 needs to go. That's 7 times p. So the opposite would be divide. So p equals ns minus 2t, all divided by 7. And then one more that I would consider a more regular problem with just one variable. 4 times x minus 2 plus 5 equals 6x minus 4. And we're trying to solve for x, but the trick is there's an x on the left and an x on the right, so we're going to have to do some combining. But step 1's always those parentheses, so we're going to take that 4 and we are going to distribute it in. We're going to multiply it by both of those, but not the 5 because the 5's not in the parentheses. So that would be 4x. 4 times 2 is 8, and then this just stays, and this just stays, and this just stays. And then normally what I like to do is go to the sides of the equal sign and see if I can combine. And these are like terms, so I can combine these. So I'm going to keep the 4x, a negative 8, and a positive 5 is a negative or minus 3, equals 6x minus 4. And then I need to combine my variables, and I need to combine my constants. Doesn't really matter which one you move where. I usually move the smaller one. So I'm going to subtract that 4x over to this side. And if I subtract that one from the left, then I'm going to have to move this one from the right. So since that's minus 4, I'm going to add 4. And that way you've canceled something off the left and something on the right. That way you have something left on each side. A negative 3 and a positive 4 is 1. And 6x minus 4x is 2x. And then again, you always go to the variable. I want the variable to be by itself, so it's the 2 that has to go. That's 2 times x. So we're going to divide by 2 and divide by 2. And you can't really do 1 divided by 2, and so we just leave it as 1/2. So on that one, x would equal 1/2. That's it.